our election laws say that every 5 years, the government in power must call an election and go back to the people. But at times, things are going well. The country is prospering. The working class is gradually and rapidly becoming part of the middle class. The middle class itself is enlarging. There's a lot of infrastructural and development and economic progress. And some of those elections are routine. They have to be called because the law says that they must be called. But they are routine in nature. There's nothing at stake. But in this election, a lot has gone wrong in this country. Great deal has gone wrong. Institutions of which we have been proud over the years are being distorted and destroyed. 16,000 people have lost their work over the last 5 years. The cost of living has increased by 35% in the last 5 years. Public sector workers have not had an increase since 2008. And there's a lot of suffering across this land as I speak to you tonight. But let me be more specific. I don't want to leave you with generalities at all this night. I want to talk to you in very specific terms. One of the great achievements of the Tom Adams administration was the creation of the drug service. It is done so spectacularly well, and it has been for years so efficiently managed that many countries have sent their civil servants to Barbados to study the Barbados drug service. It has been regarded as a model not only in the developing world, but it is seen as a model by developed countries as well. You will recall that it was intended to ensure that all of our citizens under 16 years and all people who are 65 years old and more who are suffering from traditional diseases such as asthma and hypertension and diabetes and cancer, that they will be able to get their drugs free. Remember that the Barbados model, which is being copied all around the developing world, has always emphasized the maximum education of our people, such that the Barbados workforce is regarded as the most trainable in the world, and also heavy emphasis on the provision of health services for our people. But apart from the fact that young people under 16 and the elderly over 65 could get those drugs free for those diseases, those ailments, all the other Barbadians who had health problems could get their drugs at reasonable costs, far below what you could get in the pharmacies, in the private pharmacies, provided that your drugs were on what is called the formulary. And the drugs that were placed on the formulary were drugs that were sourced from reputable companies in reputable countries that carried out rigorous inspection and quality control of their drugs. And so the drug service worked wonderfully well and was regarded as a model in developing and developed countries, something that we all could be proud of. It is part of the good governance for which Barbados has been known for many, many years. All of a sudden, under the Democratic Labour Party, in the last 5 years, the drug service has been distorted. It is not fulfilling its mission. and it is becoming a burden to a lot of the elderly in Barbados. What is happening? I start with the formulary. The drugs now are being sourced from Eastern European countries and some from India, laboratories that have not been accredited. And the doctors tell me that the drugs on the drug formulary are many of them useless, and in many instances, they are making our people sick. So that when I tell you that under the Democratic Labour Party of the last 5 years, an important institution like the National Drug Service, of which we have been so proud for so long, and which has served this country so well, is now become a devalued institution that is no longer serving the objectives which inform its establishment. And as far as the drugs for the old people, as far as they are concerned, and those under 16, they have now to pay some contribution to the cost. It's no longer free for them. And many of the old people, relying only on their pension, find that when they seek their drugs and pay for them, and they all have to come not from the private pharmacy anymore, you have to take all from the public pharmacy, and the drugs are not doing them any good. But it's digging in deeply into the little money that they have as their pension. And so the Barbados Labour Party has committed itself in its manifesto to ensuring that the purchasing of drugs from countries and from laboratories that have not been accredited and are not reputable will come to a dramatic end, and that hereafter the drugs for the elderly and those under 16 will continue to be free, and that there will be efficient and effective delivery of the service at your private pharmacies. You don't have to line up and go to the hospital or wherever the public pharmacy is concerned. The Barbados Labour Party under Tom Adams established that institution, and we in the Barbados Labour Party are committed to defending it and ensuring that it works for the benefit of the people of Barbados. And that is one of the commitments of the Barbados Labour Party contained in its manifesto. And now that I'm talking about Tom Adams, I find it amusing that the Democratic Labour Party is going around telling the people that the old people who ride on the buses, once they begin to get pension, they ride free. Every now and again, some of my friends ask me why don't take off a half day and come and drive around the country as they do once a week. We in the Barbados Labour Party are proud of that facility for the elderly in Barbados. But the Dems are walking around saying that we're going to make the old people pay for that transport in future. That cannot be a more vicious lie. We in the Barbados Labour Party are committed to protecting the good policies that we have put in place for the people of Barbados. We are not seeking office to destroy what we have created. That would be an act of political lunacy. So I want you to understand that in this campaign, you have to listen carefully, because the Democratic Labour Party, ever since Kamichuda, who was the great propagandist, major propagandist he was, he's always said privately that if you are telling lies in public, you have to tell big lies. A small lie don't get you anywhere, but a big lie may attract the attention of the people. And that is why the Democratic Labour Party in the last election campaign told you that they were going to give the teachers and the nurses and the policemen, they are going to give them duty-free cars. It was never on, because no government can discriminate against its people like that. What about the other workers? All the workers are not policemen and teachers and nurses. What about security guards? What about plumbers? What about shopkeepers? What about those working in our farms across the country? What are you going to do for them? So you couldn't put those discriminatory measures in place, but it captured the attraction and the attention of the police and the nurses and the teachers. And many of them told me then, we voted for the Democratic Labour Party because we want cars too, and they're too expensive, and we want the cars duty-free. They would never get them because governments can't discriminate against its people like that. But that was the legacy of Kamichuda. Give them the big lie, no small lie. Only big lies are attractive to people, not small ones. And so in that tradition, they also told them that all people who were building houses for the first time would get all the materials VAT-free. It never happened. Rather than that, they carried up the VAT from 15% to 17.5%, even though they got a lesser yield at 17.5% than they got at 15%. So that you have to be most careful in this election and listen carefully, because a lot of lies are abroad, and they are not small lies, they are large lies. And you must be able to discriminate and recognize that it is part of the tradition and the style of the Democratic Labour Party to tell large lies. Those of you who have good memories will remember that in the 1961 election, in their manifesto, they said that they were going to build seaside houses for workers so that when they get their vacation, they could go and live in these seaside houses free of cost. It was another of the big lies that is directly traceable to Cameron Tudor. But he has left a legacy in the Democratic Labour Party whereby they are committed election after election to put in big lies before the electorate of Barbados. But I want to deal in the limited time that I have with a few other matters which are of immediate importance to all of us. When the Barbados Labour Party came into office in 1994, you'll remember that things were so bad, again under the Democratic Labour Party, that we had to be marching in the streets because all people who were being paid by the public treasury had suffered an 8% cut. And the unemployment level was so high that often you had 2 and 3 people in the same house who were working but unemployed. Things were desperately bad. And the Barbados Labour Party committed itself to making jobs the first priority, the second priority, the third priority. In short, it was to become the dominant focus of the Barbados Labour Party in office. And the central bank has provided the figures that by the time the Owen Arthur administration left office after 14 years, 35,000 jobs had been created in this country. That is no ordinary achievement. But I mention it in the context, too, of Tom Adams in 1976, committing the Barbados Labour Party to creating 25,000 jobs in this country, and that is precisely the figure that was created when the Barbados Labour Party, after 10 years, demitted office. The point that I make is that you can trust the Barbados Labour Party because, unlike the Dems, they give great thought to their measures, and unlike Sandyford, who tells you that a manifesto does not create a social contract, when you put promises and pledges in a manifesto that don't have any meaning, you are not obligated to deliver on them. Erskine Sandyford said that, you'll recall. The Barbados Labour Party has a completely different view of its obligation when it comes to the people by way of its manifesto. And as far as this manifesto is concerned, I am to tell you that hundreds of hours, not 100 or 200, several hundreds of hours went into consultations across the country with several organizations and worked among the thinkers of the Barbados Labour Party to produce the measures that are contained herein. They have been carefully considered and they have been carefully costed, so that when we put a measure in place, we know precisely what it is going to cost the government of Barbados. I want to make 2 points before I leave. The Democratic Labour Party is telling you, good ear, although the honest members of the Democratic Labour Party who can step back for a moment from themselves, they say, look, we have to admit that the boys made a mess of the last 5 years. Having told you that, however, they've come now with a Kadir story. Kadir, give them another 5 years. But if in the last 5 years they have done such an almighty mess, why would you give them 5 years on a Kadir plea? Kadir. The Kadir plea has no place in the public life of the country. Those who aspire to leave you must have efficiency and must be able to manage the affairs of this country with efficiency and to the satisfaction of the people of the country. The second thing that I want to draw to your attention is this too, before I conclude. The Democratic Labour Party is blaming everything, all their mismanagement, on the fact that there is an international recession. So because things are bad in some countries abroad, they've got to be bad in Barbados. We in the Barbados Labour Party do not accept that argument. Malta is a small country like Barbados, situated in the Mediterranean, and Malta is flourishing. Guyana is showing several percentages of development every year. Mauritius in the Indian Ocean is flourishing. Hong Kong and Singapore flourishing. Why is it that we have to accept the argument that because in Western Europe the countries are experiencing austerity, are in some form of depression, that we in Barbados as a result have got to be in depression? We in the Barbados Labour Party says, no, it does not follow. There is a better way. In fact, when the government took power, the DLP, with $2.8 million in foreign reserves, it meant that the point of vulnerability in the Barbadian economy, often, as happened in 1991 to 94, running out of foreign reserves, was so strong that we left $2.8 billion. It meant that there was no need to give the Barbadian patient a depressant. The Barbadian patient, and by that I mean the economy, was so strong that it needed a stimulus, not a depressant. So that the DLP doctors gave the patient wrong medicine. And any patients that get wrong medicine from a doctor should put as much distance as they can between themselves and the doctor. What I say to you tonight is that Barbadian public, Barbadian electorate must fear the DLP in the same way that any sensible patient that has been given wrong medicine by the doctor must fear that doctor. And it is to that that we look forward come the next election in another week or so. And so, ladies and gentlemen, it has been my great pleasure to speak to you once again in Silver Sands and to urge that you support the platform of the Barbados Labour Party as well as the candidature of Abrams. Good night.
The people beg for change. The last election, the Dems fooled them. They had the solution for the problems facing we all over this country. But their whole policy was torment and misery. So where you red,
Good night, good night, good night. Good night, Barbados Labour Party. No, I was not hiding. And in the same manner that I felt comfortable speaking in CS Court, it is chilly, but the warmth of the Silver Sands community makes me feel even more comfortable speaking out here tonight. Now, I was witness, me and my boy Price, when we walked from the London Bar last week, we listened to a lot of things that Dennis Lowe said. And in one of the things that he said, he made mention to me. And all I will say for right now is forgive him, Father, for he knows not what he has done. Now you might be wondering why this mop is placed where it is, and why it is placed here on an occasion as special as this. You think it is a sign that we are here to clean up the mess of the Democratic Labour Party? You think it is a sign that we know exactly what needs to be cleaned up and how we will go about doing it? Well, if you think so, you're on the right path. But this mop serves a more simple purpose tonight. This mop is a sign of the level of goodwill and civility that exists amongst the family of the Barbados Labour Party and supporters of the Barbados Labour Party, and in particular,